Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Both of us just a little bit weary after a long but good several days at the Mid-South Farm and Gin Show. Plus, as I understand it, a few other commitments for you, Beck.
Oh man. Yes. Yeah, it was a busy and eventful weekend, no doubt. I should say, Jim, before we get into that, it was a great gin show, and we were happy to have got to catch up with some good friends at the Cotton Council on Thursday evening, and then of course we had Friday morning and into the lunch hour. We were doing our Achievement Award program. I know you're gonna get into that later, but so grateful to have our sponsors from Corteva there, old and new friends at Corteva that we were able to catch up with as part of that program, and it was good. It was a good weekend. That said, yes, my child is in birthday party season. We had 2 birthday parties and a wedding on Saturday in the middle of, while trying to be at a trade show, and big thing at church on Sunday. And I have never in my life been so grateful for Monday morning. I was just trying to get to Monday the entire weekend.
Well, I'm glad you survived.
Yeah. Well, and I know, you kind of have the same stuff going on, Jim. You're kind of unique. I think our listeners may know that your wife, Andrea, is kind of the showrunner. She works there at Southern Cotton Ginners. And so it's a family group lift for the Stedman family that weekend, I think. So I know
It is kind of all hands on deck. Yeah,
I feel kind of silly complaining about being busy gin show weekend to my co-host here, who is also running around like crazy.
Yeah, we do tend to live, breathe, and eat gin show for about 2 weeks beforehand.
Yeah.
So
We made it though.
we did. We survived another year. So, but that said, with all of that background, this is going to be a relatively simple episode of the podcast. Uh, the last several months have been pretty heavy with news and other activities that impact the cotton industry. And now with the gin show over with, the 2025 meeting season is all but over, and it's time to line up those final plans and get ready to head to the field. And that seemed to be the general consensus among some of the folks we talked to during the Farm and Gin show. Yeah, there's some concern and apprehension. Yes, there are questions that still need answers. But as spring approaches, that eternal farming optimism sets in, and growers are ready to get the planting season started, even if they're not sure what they're planting yet. One of the highlights of the Farm and Gin show for us is the opportunity to present the Cotton Grower Cotton Achievement Award during a special luncheon filled with past winners, industry and association leaders, and other friends. This year, we were proud to honor our 2024 recipient, Ed Schneider of Lake Providence, Louisiana, and we're going to have a special edition of the Cotton Companion coming to you next week to recap that presentation.
Yeah, that's right, Jim. But first, we have a bit of information for our listeners from our podcast sponsor, Bayer, and its Delta Pine seed brand. Our colleague and custom content manager, Hillary Wynn, recently visited with my old buddy, Jay Mahaffey. He is the science fellow at Bayer Crop Science and manager of the Bayer Scott Learning Center down there in Scott, Mississippi. Coincidentally, where I had my senior party when I was graduating from high school, down at the Scott Learning Center. Jay was around back then too, but Hillary caught up with Jay about some of the company's programs at that center, and here's what he had to say.
Hi, this is Hillary Wynn, Custom Content Manager with Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. My guest today is Jay Mahaffey, a science fellow at Bayer Crop Science and manager of the Scott Learning Center in Mississippi. Jay, welcome to the program.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role as manager of the Scott Learning Center.
Well, my background is I worked in cotton most of my career. I started as an entomologist with Delta and Pineland Company back in the good old days, and I've been through the introductions of various technologies and different varieties around, over this period of time. That's been about a 30-year period. It'll be 30 years in February. The current status, what I do is manage the Learning Center in Scott, Mississippi for Bayer, and I have 400 acres that I farm on behalf of growers. And by that, I mean, we take input from the public, design a research program trying to answer very practical questions that the growing public has about new varieties, hybrids, and various agronomic techniques that present themselves as opportunities for research. We do that in corn, cotton, and soybeans. We have a program where we share that information broadly across the industry, and I look forward to sharing it in this context also.
With the 2025 growing season underway, growth management is important for getting cotton crops to set, hold fruit, and reach their full yield potential. You've done a lot of research in this area at the Scott Learning Center. Can you share with us what you found and some tips for the 2025 season?
We have done a lot of work, and over the years, or every year, we do a trial that attempts to characterize the response of different varieties, plant growth regulators, as they're used in the field or could potentially be used in the field. Through that, we've done some broader analysis of our work over the years, and we've learned that the varieties really are different in how they respond, number one, to the products, but also they're different in the potential penalties that could be you could realize in the field if you don't do things in the most appropriate way. It's all guided by biology and ecology and how the plants are growing and scouting and all those things. But what we've done over the years, or did several years ago, was I took all our data from our plant growth regulator studies and I divided the varieties into categories. And it's a deeper story, and we can all tell all the detail of today. But generally, when you have a variety that's tall, that is responsive to PGRs, those are typically varieties that are easier to manage. The risk of excess growth or the yield penalty associated with excess growth is about half of what it would be in a variety that is tall, that is not very responsive, which is another category we use to characterize things. When you think about it, it puts an emphasis on the need to understand the background of the variety, the character of the variety, so you can use the best growth management program in the field and try to get the maximum value from the technology and genetics that you wind up buying.
So we know that there are aggressively growing cotton varieties and more determinate varieties offered for planting in different regions. What are some keys to managing growth of these different genetics so that they reach their optimal performance potential?
There are a lot of pieces of that, and I would mention this. The first thing to know is what is the sort of the character or the behavior of the variety that you're trying to grow. Make sure it's adapted for the fields, the soils, the irrigation systems, and all the things that are present in your various systems. The other thing to understand is that there are a few things about PGR to realize. One of those, and I'm talking PGRs in general, it's generally true from the things that I work on anyway. And there are a couple of things to realize about those products. One is they are active at dry weight concentrations, which is a fancy way to say the bigger the plant you have, the more you have to put on to get the activity. The other thing to realize about that is that at least the effect of PGR is long lasting in the plant. So if I put some on early, I get an effect that can linger through the later season, and it helps me to be able to get back above that level of that threshold of activity again later when I come back into the field and make other applications. The point of all of this is understand the variety and react as early as the biology present in the field will let you react. A subtle reaction or somewhat subtle reaction early in the season at 8 or 9 nodes it can help make the applications that follow that much more effective. The other thing to realize, and this is coming to light in the recent times, is there are a lot of things happening in cotton, particularly from Delta pine, that are they're going to influence this reaction. One of those are the need for the reaction. One of those, several things happen together. Number one, we've got new varieties, some of which are some of the least determinate products that have come along in a while. I believe they'll prove themselves to be that. That's something to understand about varieties. There are other technology components to this that should be recognized and acknowledged. One of those is Thrive-On. It actually is a technology from Bayer that is targeting thrips and lygus bugs. And those are two separate insects that require a great deal of talking to really figure out all the detail. But the technology greatly reduces the impact of thrips on the early season growth of the cotton. The reason that's so important is the cotton comes up healthy, it's growing actively, and the need for the applications of growth regulator happens at kind of the same time, but it may look and seem like it's quicker. Just realize that that's important. Another thing that's coming along is there's some nematode tolerances in some of these varieties that generally make the plant grow better because they've got a better root system and reductions in nematode feeding and those kind of things. All of that adds up to making a cotton variety that is it's very actively growing, it's very healthy, and it puts the need for these sort of interventions with PGR when they're needed, they're really needed. So be aware that all that is a kind of a changing system, and it's all dependent on the products you choose to grow and plant.
All great information. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
I'm delighted to do so, and I would encourage anyone that's interested to contact me at the Learning Center. We can have a one-on-one conversation or a meeting with, a community meeting of some sort.
Okay, thanks to Hillary and to Jay for that segment, and a big thanks to Bayer and Delta Pine Seed for their support of the Cotton Companion podcast.
Beck, I'm really curious. Next time I talk to Jay, I'm going to ask him about that party.
I'm sure it was, it was fine. It was left in good shape. My mom worked out there. You got to understand. So it was like some secret late night country road type of senior high school party. It was all on the up and up.
All on the up and up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And we'll get more information on that someday. But normally at this point, we'd be talking about cotton industry news. But as I said, things have been relatively quiet on the news front for the past week or so. That certainly doesn't mean people aren't paying attention to the ongoing changes and debates going on in Washington right now. Cotton's focus through the National Cotton Council, through the American Cotton Shippers Association, and other affiliated groups has naturally shifted to helping move a new farm bill to the president's desk as soon as possible.
We heard from more than one, which is say 2 or 3 council representatives who are upfront by saying this is issue number 1. This is priority number 1 at the Cotton Council these days, is getting a farm bill, an appropriate farm bill passed on Capitol Hill. So, and that's saying something because they are fighting the good fight on a lot of different fronts these days, to put it as succinctly as I can. But their number 1 issue is that farm bill. And I think I heard, again, a couple of them, including Gary Adams, mention that they believe it won't be until August or September before this new bill is brought before Congress again. That seems like a long way away to me, but when I would say that, they say, oh no, it's coming up quick. So, with this Congress, I don't know, people kind of feel like it would be a coin flip on whether they could find the political will to get a farm bill passed. But I know that that's what the council is charged with doing, is impressing upon them that this is extremely important for America's ag economy, America's farmers. So it won't be from lack of trying. I know they are.
Oh no, not at all. And I think a lot of people are really, really have gotten tired of seeing this farm bill getting kicked down the road like an old dented can at this point. So hopefully signs are favorable. Let's put it that way, to getting something happen this year. Now, of course, there are all sorts of other issues that pop up.
Well, but hold on, Jim, before we move from there, I would encourage our listeners, if you have not already, to go read the excellent story that Jim wrote. It's on our website. It's titled 7 Days in December.
7 days in December.
7 days in December, and it outlines all of the council's myriad of efforts that they were putting forth back in December to get at least what was the spending. I forget the name of it, but get something passed in lieu of a new farm bill that's been a saving grace for a lot of us out here. So go read that as kind of a table setter for what the council's up to in the coming months.
Right. And, it's interesting because some of the deadlines that were put into that piece of legislation. Now, it doesn't impact the economic aid package that was passed. It doesn't impact the disaster aid, but it certainly, I think, coming up here in another week or so is a deadline on government funding again. So you can anticipate seeing a scramble on getting that settled, while USDA is putting all the works in place to get these economic aid checks out in the hands of growers who desperately need it. I would say the only other newsy item right now is we always seem to be focusing on acreage at this point, and USDA's cotton acreage projection from their outlook conference came out last week. They say 10 million acres of cotton, uh, as opposed to the National Cotton Council's 9.6, and certainly as opposed to our 11.0. But the real number everybody's waiting for will be in USDA's prospective plantings report that comes out on March 31. So that will be the final say before everybody goes to the field on that.
Yeah, another, that's their number falls in between ours at 11 million, as you just mentioned, and the council's 9.6. Still a marginal reduction from 2024. I think what we heard Joe Nicosia say, and Jim, I know you will be covering Nicosia's speech from the Gin Show on multiple platforms, meaning in the magazine and online and elsewhere. But yeah, I think we heard him say that a problem, the U.S. is doing the right thing in terms of trying to correct, fundamentals and reducing acreage, while not great in the near term, if you're Cotton Grower Magazine, is what's going to take to get supply demand back in order. The problem is he feels like increased production in Brazil and possibly Australia could negate the reduction on our end. So, Joe had a great deal of other things to say about the global fundamental scenario. Again, Jim will bring y'all all of the details from that long speech. God bless Joe. He was dealing with AV problems during his speech from the Gin Show floor this past weekend, but he still hit it out of the park. He's always good at that.
To Joe's credit, he held it together and kept things going, and
Yeah.
and that's fine. But yeah, you're right. There's still a lot of uncertainty over all this, and as we record this, we are 24 hours, 24 hours after the news of the new tariff being put in place, in China's retaliative tariff of 25% tariff on cotton and soybeans and a few other items. So we'll see how all this plays out here over the next few weeks. I think this was sort of the other shoe people were waiting for to see if it was going to fall or not. And now I guess we'll make adjustments and see where we stand. As folks are trying to finalize those last minute decisions to head to the field.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks to Delta Pine for their gracious sponsorship of the podcast, and to Mr. Jay Mahaffey for participating in this episode's special custom segment. And as always, thanks to you, dear listener, for joining us and for your continued support. As always, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did like what you've heard, please be sure and spread the word. Tell your farming friends and neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
The Cotton Companion podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman, he's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you next week with a special episode for the Cotton Companion.
God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God